Today, as part of the celebration of the Women's Month, we take a moment to honor the memory of Maria Dolores Fernos Lopez Cepero, Tati, who passed away on February the 22nd, 2022, at the age of 75, after dedicating her life to the fight for women's equality and the eradication of discrimination and gender-based violence in Puerto Rico. Maria Dolores was a lawyer and a law professor who belonged to the group of feminists that promoted the creation of the Office of the Women's Ombudsman and the first to hold the position under the administration of former Governor Sila Maria Calderón in 2001. Fernos Lopez Cepero had a distinguished career in legal services, specializing in housing, equity, and everything related to the claims and needs of women. She also defended the rights of immigrant women like those from Haiti and the Dominican Republic. As the first women's attorney, Fernos Lopez Cepero promoted a study to learn firsthand about the impact of the law for the prevention and intervention with domestic violence, today known as Law 54 of 1989. Considered by her colleagues as a teacher and a model to emulate, Maria Dolores promoted country projects that opened spaces for women to reach positions of power, strengthen themselves to overcome poverty and violence. The director of the Matria projects, Amarilis Pagan Jimenez, highlighted the great contributions of Fernos Lopez Cepero. It is difficult to express what the death of Maria Dolores Fernos means because her dreams, her actions, and her struggles transformed the lives of all women in Puerto Rico, even those who did not know her, she said. In 2021, Maria Dolores received a distinction as an emeritus professor upon her retirement from the School of Law of the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico. At that time, and in her message accepting the award, Fernos Lopez Cepero did not forget her struggles. She invited the new lawyers to build a more equitable country. I highlight three scourges that need this support: marginalization due to race, gender-based violence, and the perpetual exclusion of those who are born and seem condemned not to live in inhumane poverty, she said. Rest in power, Maria Dolores Fernos.
Greetings and welcome. My name is Shirindokht Nourmanesh. I'm the program manager of AllyNetwork program at Diversity in Health Training Institute. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional land of the Native American tribes of Bay, Miwok, and the Yokuts people, past and present. Today, this land encompasses Contra Costa County in California. I would like to acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. AllyNetwork is a bridge between the culturally competent mental health providers and immigrants, asylees, and refugees of Alameda County. It is funded by California Mental Health Services Act of Alameda County Behavioral Health Services. We are releasing this video by the end of Women's History Month with a focus on immigrant women and girls and their mental health. This is the second session of our 2022 Wellness Workshop Series. that are designed to support the well-being of immigrants, refugees, and asylees of Alameda County. For this particular session, we're going to be focusing on post-traumatic growth. But before we talk about post-traumatic growth, we need to a little bit talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, what it is, when and why it happens, the risk factors of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, the process of healing, the process of grieving and after the trauma and process of healing. And we're going to also take a look at PTSD and evolution, if there are any relations between these two. And also at the end, we're going to get to post-traumatic growth. It is when PTSD happens, it is actually the reaction of one's mind and body to a traumatic experience, to a traumatizing event. Some examples of which can be acts of violence, sexual assault, rape, war, displacement, infertility, bankruptcy, accidents. Accidents can cause PTSD, loss of loved ones, so many different things. These are just examples. But when it happens, when PTSD happens, it is capable of uprooting one from what is familiar and safe and trusted. It happens when the innocence, the camaraderie, the companionship, the collaboration that is expected between humans in a collaborative society is ignored. It happens when the promise of being and keeping the trusted, safe space is broken. PTSD happens, and it's a cause of when one's human dignity is ignored and or violated. Of course, the outcomes would show as a sense of helplessness in the person, avoidance, isolation, fear of future, fear of the unknown, and it might show itself actually in disorderly patterns of thoughts and speech and behavior, and the person might exhibit some lack of attention to hygiene and the society, or inability to communicate properly. PTSD is developed goes back to how trauma happens, and the time of the grieving and the healing process that hopefully comes after it also depends on a number of factors. Each person, we have to always remember that each person needs a certain time and a certain space to go through the process of healing. We always have to remember that no two persons are the same. Each person goes through this process based on their abilities, and also based on the help that they get from others. So the grieving period differs in individuals. We always have to remember that either we are going through that ourselves, we are experiencing PTSD, or we are witnessing it somebody else. So we need to be aware of it and always remember that. Now, if research shows that if you know, the PTSD that comes after trauma, it usually takes a month and a half, maximum a month and a half. Anything more than that can be concerning. So when you look into other cultures, I was thinking about my culture, and I realized that we have a concept we call chelle, which means the 40th day after the, for example, in this case, after the grieving process. Of course, we use chelle in different contexts, but in this context, definitely it is the same as this kind of a grace period to go through that grieving process and overcome PTSD that follows trauma. After the 40 days, we realize that the person is ready to come out, go back to the society. We realize that we acknowledge that the person is not the same as before the trauma happened. the traumatic experience. But there is hope that this person, with the help of the community and loved ones and the support that that person gets, can get to what they were before the traumatic experience. So the same here. It's really interesting that also science mentions that those are like traditional wisdom, and the science, modern science, also points that out, that it takes about a month and a half for the person to go through that. If it doesn't happen, then it's concerning, as I mentioned, and it shows in one's behavior, speech, and it affects so many different aspects of the person's life. So the person will constantly be on guard. The body and mind is constantly on guard, constantly in the state of fight or flight, always ready to either fight back or run away and escape and hide. And the individual relives the trauma over and over again, with all the details and all the that came with the traumatic events. And eventually, sooner or later, the person withdraws from the society and isolates oneself. There are some, as I mentioned earlier, people go through this on their own speed and abilities, but also at the same time there are some risk factors that we need to keep in mind that affect the outcome, and they might actually help for the PTSD to prolong and take longer. For example, the severity and nature of trauma, the history of childhood adversity, history of poor coping mechanism, low social support. We all know that social support is important. Family history of trauma also is one risk factor, and also physiological variables, such as the low heart rate or low cortisol level. So always we need to keep all of these factors in mind when dealing with PTSD. So now, if the process of grieving is ignored, usually the person might not be aware of it, and or cannot find the strength to do it, or maybe needs the help and cannot find the help, or the person does not want to go through grieving. So in that case, in either of these cases, the individual might fall either into a hedonistic state of being, meaning that always partying, for example, having too much alcohol, sex, drugs, self-medicating, and even some partying, and I mentioned that actually, and so even getting into some dangerous activities. Or the person can get into fatalistic state of being, in which the individual just gives up, and believing that everything is fated, everything that is predestined, and nothing one can do to change what had happened. So, and of course, when PTSD happens and this all is happening and this process is prolonging, so many different things can trigger the person over and over again and make that individual to re-experience and relive in that situation again. There are intrusive memories that can bring back the feeling of the pain and the feeling of that traumatic experience. The flashbacks, cues like sounds, songs, facial features, anecdotes, so many different things. Sometimes the smells can bring back memories and trigger PTSD. Also PTSD nightmares that are unable to rehearse new coping behaviors for the person. By this I mean that when we talk about, for example, dreams, regular dreams and nightmares that we usually might have, And all of us have, all the time, we have dreams, and sometimes we don't remember, sometimes we remember. But the normal dreams that we have, they're all for us to rehearse our coping behaviors, go through in our, in dream, throughout the dream. We review what had happened during the day, and we rehearse it, and we purge those experiences. Sometimes we purge it in a way that it becomes like a nightmare. But these are necessary coping mechanisms of the body and mind that need to go through. But when PTSD nightmares happen, these coping mechanism, the rehearsals of new coping behaviors doesn't happen. The person is unable to have those and to purge those experiences. So the experiences repeat themselves with all the elements, all the details that happened. They repeat, and of course they affect one's sleep, and it might create anxiety. I would like us to look at the positive side of PTSD. Maybe there is some positive sides, and maybe we can take advantage of it if it happens, if you have that experience. So looking at evolutionary biology, actually, and scientific research, they show that PTSD has a purpose. Throughout the evolution of human beings, for millennia, PTSD has been around, and it has a purpose. It is a defense mechanism. And it's for the mobilization of our species defense reaction. So it helps PTSD, actually, the research shows that it helps humans to recognize danger in advance, to either run away and shelter, or save themselves from potentially harmful stimuli that might jeopardize their livelihood. So it is necessary. It has not disappeared. It has not disappeared throughout our evolutionary process, because humans, again, the research shows that humans have always been able to rewire their brain. They can rewire their bodies, and they can rewrite their narratives. That's why I would like to invite you, if you're going through that process, if you're experiencing PTSD, remember that there is always help. You can talk to your loved ones, to your community members, to your coaches, spiritual leaders, and also to professionals, mental health professionals who are out there and can help you in this grieving process. You're not alone. Please reach out to them. If you look into AllyNetwork.org, you will see that there are almost 400 mental health providers, culturally competent mental health providers who can help you. They speak your language. You're going to be able to look up their name by your language and get in touch with them. They know your language, they know your culture, they can help you. So please, if you are going through this, just remember that you're not alone. So as I was saying, we can rewrite our brain and our minds, and rewrite our story after the PTSD happens. And of course, it is easier said than done, but if we start focusing on the future and start looking into the past just less and less every day, less and less, and focus on the future, and if we can think about a goal and a dream that we had maybe prior to the traumatic experience, or something that we just recently came up with, a goal, visualizing a goal, and working toward that, and step by step taking steps to reach that goal, we will get to a place that we feel that we can easily move forward. And again, you can ask for help and talk to someone, a professional who can speak your language and can help you. Now, the most important thing is that throughout all this, we need to acknowledge that our role in the sustainability of trauma. Each one of us, if we are going through this, we have a role in this. We are playing a role, and just keeping in that in our mind will help us to understand how our beliefs also feed into PTSD and to how it is prolonged. So think about that. But it is possible to take control of our emotions. We need to also work on that to take control of our emotions and what triggers the emotions and how we respond to those triggers. Always kind of like hovering calmly over and objectively over our feelings, over our behaviors, over our emotions, and see how we are going to respond to that. Of course, it takes time and it needs some attention to it, but it is possible. So with that, we are going to be able to change our consciousness to move beyond what keeps us stuck, to alter our minds and our reality, and to create a new reality, to create a new life. And always remembering that with this, we allow PTSD to be the necessary yet resilient coping mechanism that has always been. And we can take it to our advantage. So again, we can educate ourselves, read and talk to people and discuss it in our communities, and try not to fall into stigma that comes with mental health. And also, again, seek the help of professionals. There are some treatment approaches that you can also read about them. Check out library books and use the internet to read about them, like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy. These are like hands-on methods of treatment. Drama therapy, theater therapy, music therapy, hip-hop therapy, art therapy, expressive art therapy, my favorite, narrative therapy. These all help one to transcend and get to a space that one can change the archetypes of one's stories, the signs and symbols of one's stories and elements of the narrative, and create a new one. There are some older and more collective approaches, like talking to a guru, being under the guidance of a guru, a sage, a coach, a counselor, and also we can consciously decide to go back to nature. Nature has a profound effect on our healing and how we deal with our problems. So getting back to the nature, going for walks and go swimming, proximity to our community members as well, that also helps. Getting involved in creative ways of expression, holistic, creative and expressive means of healing, starting painting, starting writing story, writing our memoirs, so many different things, drawing, acting, dancing, moving around. Also spirituality and volunteerism and philanthropy. Philanthropy helps a lot in healing. Meditation, prayer, yoga, I know many of us do those things. Martial arts and disciplined psychosomatic exercises. They help with our healing. So the point is that to keep that in mind, that humans understand that they have the power and the ability to choose. And as I mentioned a number of times before, scientific research also shows that humans choose to take responsibility. They consider to be intentional, and they tend to move forward. And the humans tend to move toward goals, consciously or unconsciously. We are always, evolutionary biology has shown it, that we are always moving toward goals and we are moving forward. So when we survive PTSD, it actually results in long-lasting personality changes. It advances us if we look at it this way and if we approach it this way and overcome it, it advances us into compassion and greater love for humanity. It awakens us to injustices and to suffering in the world. And it levels our path to post-traumatic growth. In the words of Maulana of Balkh, as known in the West as Rumi, گر کشته شدی نگو که من کشته شدم، شکرانه بده که خونبهای تو منم. With that said, the springtime is the most auspicious time, at least in my opinion, for us to start over. Spring is the time for rebirth, for sprouting, for rejuvenating, for growing. And for me, as an Iranian immigrant, the beginning of the solar year, the spring, marks the beginning of the Iranian New Year, Nowruz. Nowruz in Persian language means a new day, and is celebrated in Central Asia, especially in Afghanistan, Iran, and Tajikistan. So happy Nowruz to all of you, those of you who are celebrating it. With that, I hope we all start anew, afresh, and with newly written thoughts and behaviors. And despite it all, move forward. Life is beautiful, Siavash Kesrai says. Yes, yes, life is beautiful. Life is an old fire temple. The dance of its flames will light the world if you light it up. Until you don't, then it's your fault. آری آری، زندگی زیباست. زندگی آتشگهی دیرنده پاورجاست. گر بیفروزی رقص شعله‌اش در هر کران پیداست. ورنه خاموش است و خاموشی گناه ماست. Happy spring, happy Nowruz. Be well.